Good evening. Welcome to your regular meeting of your Board of Commissioners, April 1, 6:30 p.m. Thank you. Tonight, we're going to have the invocation delivered by our county manager, Lance Metzler, followed with the Pledge of Allegiance, and we'll let Commissioner Richardson introduce that person. Mr. Manager,
Sir,
let's stand if able.
If you would stand, please, and bow your head and join me in a moment of prayer. O God, from whom all powers come, by those divine, with all must abide, we thank you for our liberties, freedom, for our opportunities and our pledges. We beg of you to bless, assist, and enlighten the Board of Commissioners to demonstrate your direction through the decisions that they make here tonight. May they be just and upright in their thinking, honest in all their actions, and ever be guided by a true conscience in the actions they vote upon here tonight. Forgive us all our mistakes and selfish tendencies, and help prepare us by your good deeds for our eternal union with you through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Tonight, the Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Deputy Captain Brown of the Rockingham County Sheriff's Office. So if you'd render their appropriate courtesy, and Captain Brown.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Captain Brown.
I couldn't see that.
As you know, we operate from an agenda, a published agenda, that has been out for several days now. Gentlemen, do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve as printed.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Very good. We have an approved agenda. We also operate from a consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are non-controversial items. However, if anyone has questions about these items, please contact Lance Metzler, our county manager. Gentlemen, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Very good. We have approved consent agenda. That leads us to public comment. Tonight, we have one person signed up to speak, and we'll ask our county manager to give us our guidelines.
Yes, sir. The public comment period shall be for the purpose of allowing members of the public to present any matter pertaining to county business or items on the Board of Commissioners' agenda. The remarks shall be addressed directly to the Board of Commissioners, not to the staff, the audience, or media. The chairperson just opened the public comment period. Any speaker who wishes to speak shall approach the podium and not speak from his or her seat. Each speaker shall clearly state his or her name and his or her physical address when he or she approaches the podium. Each person shall be allotted 3 minutes. In this case, we've only got one speaker, so I won't go into detail about yielding other time. Your time will be displayed on the monitor in front of you. The time clock will start with 3 minutes. You will hear a beep at 1 minute to alert you to wrap up your comments. Speakers appearing for the Board of Commissioners will not be allowed to campaign for public office, promote private business ventures, or use language of a personal nature which insults or demeans any person or which, when directed at a public official, is not related to his or her official duties. The Board of Commissioners may accept written comments in lieu of oral statements. Written comments can be delivered to the county manager's office. Mr. Chair.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Manager. Sam Page.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, it's an honor to come before you today. I just want to give you a little update. At our last County Commissioners meeting, a question was asked about training in McAllen, Texas. I did attend a training conference in McAllen, Texas, and originally had stated that it was paid for by asset forfeiture money, and I did some checking on that. I was mistaken. I had two events during that year. One was in D.C. and one was in McAllen, Texas. And it was we found it was a clerical error that a document requesting asset forfeiture funds to be used for that purpose for the training did not get over to finance. And I've met with finance today, and we understand where the deficit was, so we've got that corrected. So there shouldn't be any more problems in the future. As far as that training goes, the funds were processed just like any other out-of-state process, but I have talked with the county manager and let him know that we'll make sure that all the paperwork is attached so that if there's any request for drawdown for any asset forfeiture funds, that you have the special request attached.
Very good. Thank you, Sheriff. You've got 2 more minutes if you need them.
I appreciate your time. And again, like I said, thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you for your transparency. Appreciate that correction tonight. We appreciate you being here.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And that concludes our public comment period. That'll bring us to item number 7, Ronnie Tate, Director of Engineering.
Got that red color on.
Good evening, gentlemen. I got just one item for your consideration tonight, and with me tonight is Bill Lester with LKC Engineering. As you know, Bill's group do our water and sewer design for all our water and sewer projects, and he's here tonight just to give you a quick update on our water and sewer projects, to go over a couple of challenges we're having with the construction of the force main on US 220, and to talk with you about a possible move of some of the contingency funds into unit pricing to address some of those challenges on 220. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Bill to update you gentlemen on the projects.
Good evening, Mr. Lester.
Good evening. Thank you, Board. I'm going to do probably the fastest and easiest thing first, and that's going to update on a lot of what we've got going on. Some of the things you probably don't hear about as often, we'll get started with those. There's a Hogan's Creek Booster Pump Station relocation project or replacement project. That project, if you ride up and down 220, you'll see it's well underway. We are waiting to have the actual station. It's one of those kind of built in place, delivered. It's been greatly delayed at the manufacturer, but we are expecting it before the end of this month. So that's going to start to take shape really quick. That project is in construction and probably going to be delayed a few months because of that. But as soon as it gets here, it will finish up pretty quickly. Another one is your Fishing Creek Pump Station, relocating that out of the floodplain. We've designed that project. You may recall we got competitive funding for this one. It was for flood prevention, preventing flood damage. And while this project sits just outside the flood zone, it has had some flooding. So we were able to secure that funding. It has been designed for quite a bit. We've gone through the preliminary engineering report phase, the design, we've submitted it. We've actually got the construction permits, but the funding agency is still doing their approval. Now, quite honestly, they've had it several months, but the funding agency at the Division of Water Infrastructure, casting no bad shadows there, they're extremely behind. They've, with all of the money you've seen infused in the state, they're probably well understaffed. So it's taken a while to get through that process. But as soon as we get something back from them, we're going to be released to be able to bid that project. And then that project will go forward, and that's to relocate that pump station kind of on the same site and get it reconnected to everything. We've got a couple of asset inventory and assessment projects ongoing, one for the water system, one for the wastewater. Quite honestly, I think about 6 months ago told you we were having delays getting those released. Those are released. We're well into the project. I think we are complete with all the field work on those. These are projects that'll kind of update you on the status of existing assets in the water and sewer departments. And we'll probably run for at least another 12 to 18 months. Most of the field work's done. We got a little tweaking on some of the critical assets to go out and look at. But we're also kind of in that water audit stage, water and wastewater audit, where we're looking at usage versus what may or may not be lost when it comes to water, or inflow and infiltration on the wastewater side. But those are ongoing. Before I get to the sewer capacity improvements, because I think we can springboard that into the rest of the conversation that Ronnie was talking about, I think we also, here in the next month, a few months ago, we approved several targeted expenditures of funds. A couple of those projects are about to kick off. I think Ronnie will probably bring those to you in the next several weeks as far as getting a contract to do the design and get started. Those first designated projects, that'll be good to get those started. Some of the others are following. I know one of the commissioners asked me, we're still having meetings with some of the folks to get that moving, but all of that is going forward. But this is good news. We're doing all of that studying and planning, and we're a little ahead of even having that money released completely. That money was directly appropriated through state legislator to the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality. But having conversations with staff and everybody and realizing a lot of these projects are based on criteria that may or may not 100% be eligible at DEQ, meaning if there's, if there's any capacity improvements and things like that that are a little oriented towards a growth or a capacity of a pump, DEQ, there's usually questions if it's economic development, things like that. So those funds are being transferred to the Office of State Budget and Management, which is where your funds were in the last project. And it's a lot more seamless project, but we are waiting for that to happen. We've been told that's going to happen in this upcoming legislative session. So that money will then be extended. The offers will be extended to the county, and you can begin starting those projects. So that's actually really good news, and I think it's going to kind of allow you to address some of these difficult projects that are helping you build capacity and helping different entities toward your goal there. So that gets us to the sewer capacity improvements. That project is well under construction. Probably half to a little over 50, no, probably a little over 50% of the pipe is in the ground. The pumps.
That's on 220.
That's on 220, yes, sir. The big green pipe that is upgrading our capacity for the approved residential growth that you've seen and are continuing to see. The work is going well. The pump stations, all three of the main pump stations along that route, as you know, are being upgraded. If you're out towards what we call Red Birch Pump Station, which is closer to the old, I think you used to call the Red Birch Convenient Mart there, if you look down in the area, you can see where they've cleaned, and they got a very large hole. So this pump station is a little bigger than the other one. It's a little more involved, and they're kind of doing those in order. As soon as they get that, I think they're going to start probably placing concrete, if not by the end of this week, next week. They'll get all the concrete poured, and then they'll move to the next one. And they'll get all the concrete work done at each of the three stations, and then they'll move back and start doing piping and pump installation and things like that. And that's to hopefully give the pumps time enough to get here. That's another thing that is usually a little delayed. But in, I think, Ronnie's memorandum to the board, we are running into a lot of conflicts out there. That large pipe, when you see it riding down the road, you might not realize it, but if you get out and get close to it, that's a 20-inch pipe, and it doesn't bend at all. So a lot of the obstacles we're hitting with either a vertical or horizontal parallel to the road or crossing side roads or the existing utilities have caused some either grade challenge or actual need to move in short spaces and things like that. And the bends for these type lines are very expensive. They're in the unit item, and they're causing fairly significant concerns to the price. Now, it's kind of in the contingency that we usually set up. We just usually don't dive this deep into it, but I think the proper thing, or what we would propose to do here, this is a unit item contract. We would propose to transfer the $720,000 from the contingencies into the direct unit cost. And what that means is we've actually already encountered a lot of this through the bins and bores, which I won't give you the exact numbers, but these bins cost anywhere from $8,000 to $10,000 to $15,000 a piece. So that's the magnitude of what we're hitting. And we would only pay for what is coming, but we're looking at the number because of this and some of the bores that when you're going across the side streets and there's a gas line that's not where it was supposed to be, it causes the bore crew to have to set up a little further away, so the bore casing has to be a little bit more. So we're running into a lot of those problems already, and we know we've encouraged the contractor, and he's got out ahead of himself. He's trying to force the location folks to get ahead and doing a little better potholing to move. And sometimes we can move, sometimes we still have to have the grade change and the bends and that thing. It doesn't mean you don't have to have them. It just tries to mean we stay in the right of way and do a little better job. And for the record, we actually have a few places where we've actually had a homeowner support us in allowing us to get an easement to slide over and do some things. So that's helped too. But what we would propose to do is to move the contingencies into the direct contractual unit items so that we can cover what we've already done and not have to continually do that, because we're not going to pay it if it doesn't go in the ground. It's a unit item price. It's not approving it and giving it to anyone unless it's installed. And we do feel like most of it is probably going to get used. And I know that's also probably springboarding into something else that we discussed. I can't remember if Ronnie mentioned it, but I think that our contingency set at 5%. We usually set them at 10%. We'd recommend, if at all possible, the funds are there in our older earmark because we had some great successes early on and had that funding left, and maybe extend it from 5% to 10% again, because that way we continue doing business as usual. In other words, smaller projects can be approved, smaller change orders can be approved as they come, as long as they're in the approved contingencies, and/or if there's something big, I'll be right back here again. And I know you hadn't voted on this yet, but I will be back again. I think Commissioner Richardson and Mr. Powell, we're talking about directional bores. Our directional bore under the river, they're turning it in as a lot more linear footage than was called for. So we'll probably be talking about that, but I am not prepared tonight because we're vetting and asking a few questions before we decide exactly what that needs to be. So that's.
Mr. Lester, I've got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
So of the 720,000 that we had in contingency, is that what's remaining?
No,
Or that was the total contingency?
That's not even the total. That's less than the total.
Okay, so you're asking to move how much again?
Much from the existing contingencies you have set up into the direct contracted unit items.
So that would still leave us with some contingency.
You would still have some, that's right. It would be very small number and
Hang on, I think Ronnie has an answer.
Sorry.
It'll be roughly about 250,000 left if you vote to allow this transfer over. We currently have $975,030 left in contingency right now.
Well, I'm concerned that that's going to be enough if we're continuing to have these issues. The borings are running longer than we anticipated. We're having other issues. So my question to staff is that enough? That's what you're asking for.
That's what I'm asking for now, because I like to bring it to you when I'm kind of paying attention to it. The other part is we set that contingency up on 5%. We usually do 10%. And I would say because the funding is in the leftover earmark, because it's not touching the projects we're setting up, if we could just reestablish the contingencies to that number as needed, I'd still come back to you for anything large, but just to set it aside to make sure we're not going over that. I don't want to transfer it all right now, even though I know there's another large one coming. I'd rather Ronnie and I come back to you when I know the details about that.
My only concern is I don't think we're getting the full picture
Okay?
of the impact. That's my only concern. And knowing that we'll have more coming, it'll be what it'll be, I guess is one thing. But knowing that this is not the end of it, I think we just need to go into it with our eyes open.
Agreed.
Any other questions? Commissioner Barra?
Mr. Lester, I just have a question for benefit of the public. Why did we do a 5% contingency and not a 10%?
I think we had great success before, so we probably said okay to the 5%. We had some really good luck on the projects. This is probably a little bit of a result of such a large project. It's $20-some million base, and it's also very large pipe, so little problems are more costly. And so just moving it back to 10%, and again, it's still money. I'm not minimizing that part, but I think the money that we've, maybe the reason we set it up at 5, I might have been part of that recommendation, I don't know. I think it's probably because we had such great success on numerous projects before that, and this one's just not running that way.
And Mr. Lester, I understand the importance of having a contingency because sometimes you just can't account for things. But, whenever I have to go work in my yard, I have to call 811 to find out where the utilities are. So I would imagine that as an engineer, when you're laying out these plans, you should know where the utilities are before you start a project?
Well, we do a lot of that, but 811 is not 100%.
Sorry, obviously that's for the public, but I imagine you have a similar
Yes, sir.
system where you can check
Absolutely.
for utilities before you start digging in the ground.
Absolutely.
So.
And sometimes they're marked correctly,
Okay.
but not always, and that's been part of these problems, some of them.
Okay. Thank you.
They only have to be,
2 foot on either side.
it's actually a little more
30
than that
inches or
now.
something.
Yeah, and that matters a lot when it's,
When it's a 20-inch pipe.
that's correct.
Okay. Thank you, Bill.
Very good, thank you.
So if you move the money you're talking about, is that where you're going to put the 10% and get back to a 10% contingency? You had 5%. You're asking to put it back to 10%. I may be missing something.
I may not be explaining it properly. The money that we're talking about transferring is to move it directly into contractual amounts so that we can just continue to approve those as they go because we know they're there, some of them already done and some coming. And then the contingency upgrade was just so that we can continue without worrying about going over the amount before we're back in front of the board. We're not going to come back for $20,000 problem because that's something the board directs the manager to do. There's going to be another one, I think, with the boards that'll come back. But even if you transfer the contingencies now and raise it from the 5 to 10, that doesn't mean I'm not coming back because that'll be big enough. We're coming back.
I guess what
It will
what
not
I'm
be done
saying is
without your-
the money that you're talking about moving over into the contract, we're going to spend that. So the
720 is what they're asking.
so that's going to be spent. So when we're talking about an additional contingency, 10% contingency, we're talking about money over and above that because that's already been spent.
That's correct.
Basically, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then just to clarify for the people listening, being a contractor myself, 811 doesn't always get it right, nor that it tell you the depths, and sometimes the contractor don't get it right when they put it in either. So there's a lot of different obstacles to overcome when you're digging in the ground.
And when they try to do good, there's some grade changes that just demand it to make safe conditions that, may or may not have been something you would have wanted to just put in what if. You don't do a lot of what ifs in unit items, but, it's something you could think about in the future. And like I said, 20-inch pipe is not very pliable. I think they can get about 4 inches deflection per piece of pipe. Not much.
I just got to ask this one last question. Do you know what a souped-up pipe is?
A souped-up pipe, I'm not sure I do.
I heard somebody explaining this pipeline on 220 and said they were using souped-up pipes. Just wondered if you had encountered them in your career, because I certainly haven't.
I'm not sure what souped up means. If anybody has stopped and tried to check it out and take a picture up close, this is C900 pipe. It is very thick,
Yes, sir, it is.
and it's that way for a reason, hopefully to last a very long time.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Any more questions, gentlemen? With that, I'll ask one time, and Ronnie may want to do it, or you may, Bill. Exactly what is the ask? You're asking the board to approve transferring $720,000 from the contingencies to be included in the direct unit item cost totals for specific bins and bore length quantities.
Yes, sir, directly into the contract, yes, sir. And then the second ask was with the available funds, and I know Pat's not here, but the available funds, and it could be contingent on her checking, you have available funds in the previous earmark to where we could extend the contingency from the 5% back to the 10%.
So additionally, we'll go from 5% to 10%. So that's a twofold ask.
Yes, sir.
720,000 and then go from 5 to 10%.
Yes, sir.
Gentlemen, would someone care to make that motion?
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Mr. Lester, is it, I understand that we need to get the money switched over, the 720, but as far as moving from the 5 to 10%, is that something that needs to be done tonight?
I don't know that it has to be done tonight.
I just
would like to probably have us make sure we're moving in that direction.
Mr. Chair, I would prefer to just take these items separately so we could just get a little more information from Ms. Galloway about this.
I think that's fine if we want to have it as a two-part. So the first motion would be to move the 720,000 from contingency into the project.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
And if Ronnie and Lance needs, I'll be sure to talk to Pat. And I think we actually had this conversation with her in a recent meeting, but we can do that and make sure she gets you any information you need on the contingencies.
Is there a desire on the board to take up the second part, which would be
I think the
increasing the
suggestion is to
contingency?
table, and I would endorse that.
Is that a motion then, Commissioner Barrow, that we table the second part?
I would prefer to table it for tonight until we can receive.
On that, Mr. Manager? Or can-
Yes.
All right, so we do have that in the form of a motion. Is that a second, Commissioner Richardson?
Yes.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Very good. So thank you. So we'll defer that to Pat and let you guys bring that back to us.
One other quick question. We're going to talk about the discussion that we had with Lee and the town of Madison and Mayodan about the 130 or whatever it was that they need to complete their project?
Information. I didn't hear that in the beginning, so I didn't bring that up. So would you want me to lead into that, or you want to say anything about
It's
that?
up to you all. There's a need there. We're short about, is it 130 something?
Is it exactly like the email that you sent us?
It is,
Yeah, it is. That's the one you explain it. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, I remember the email well, anytime they're asking for that sort of money, but perhaps it would be good to explain it for the public's information.
Please,
Okay.
if you can.
all right, so as a part of the regional capacity project, the towns and the county meet monthly now, just so that everybody kind of stays in tune with everything that's going on. We're relying on each other. And 2 years ago, the county, when Mayodan made the initial commitment to get some of the problems that are now a problem upgraded so that they're ready for the initial kind of wave before the big capacity need hits. And the county agreed to that. It was part of an agreement you signed with them. And that number was $700,000. And it was to do several miscellaneous items at their treatment plant. And if, was the email this form, is that right?
Whatever you've sent me, I forwarded it to them.
If you have that, the things that were in it are all still roughly the same. A couple of them price changes with one addition. There's an ATS replacement. You'll see at the bottom of it, if you remember the email, it's $75,000. It is what allows the generator to continue working, and it has completely been fried. And without that, they had already gone over. The one big thing the county was kind of getting involved in when they did the initial visits, you saw that there was a problem with the influent bar screen that cleans up the stuff and keeps the system from operating kind of in a nasty-looking method. But that ran into some problems. The concrete, when they took the old one out, was falling off of the entire basin, and they had to completely redo the concrete and line it. And that pretty much ran that project over almost $160,000. Otherwise, they actually would have continued to have enough to do everything. So at our regional meeting, they presented to Lance the difference now is not quite the full overage because some of the pricing must actually be a little better. But the balance is $131,000 still to do those miscellaneous things, even adding the ATS. And they made the request, was there still interest in helping them out with that?
Absolutely. I mean, it's for the capacity that we need. We talked about it in depth at the meeting and felt like it was important that we finish this project up.
It's for the initial smaller capacity that they afforded. And I just learned about the ATS going out about 2 or 3 weeks ago. It was something pretty catastrophic, and they've actually had a power glitch since we talked about it. And they went down for a while. They're trying to get somebody in there to give them some kind of temporary solution because they've been told the ATS delivery is early 2025 or something. It's one of those items we're starting to see that's just got long lead times, and they're trying to do anything they can to find one somewhere else. They'll be able to do this.
So with these overages, you said sounds like it's $131,030.54 asked from the county. Is that correct?
That's getting down to the penny, but yeah, that's
Well, that's what you
exactly
sent
what's
us.
in there, right?
Okay. With that, what percentage does this represent? Are we footing the whole bill? Is the city doing part of this?
They've paid for other things, but this is sticking to those miscellaneous items. And this is,
We agreed to pay
you
for the
agreed to pay for that
miscellaneous.
700, that's right.
Okay.
And those funds, explain to them where the funds are coming from for that
Those funds are coming from that same
pot of money.
pot of money, the ARPA and leftover earmark money that we were able to save from all the previous projects.
Okay.
And that increase in the contingencies I mentioned, not to go back there, and this money is all within the allowable amount, along with some other things that I think Pat has probably worked on amendments to include in that budget. So
These are monies that have already been set aside. They're not coming out of the general fund right now.
No.
Okay. All
And
right.
this is your recommendation, Mr. Manager, that we do this one?
Based on our meeting with Mr. Hicks, who's their new manager over there in Mayodan, and with Madison and with Lee and myself and Ronnie and Bill. Yes, sir.
Do we need to allocate this now or wait until Pat gets back with us with this?
This would be a different thing. I would ask that you all consider that now. And I know it's not on the agenda part, but I think it's important that they go ahead and get started with it.
I'll make a motion that we approve the expenditure.
I'll second.
Very good. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries.
my
Mr. Lester?
apologies, did I forget anything else?
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Kind of last minute, but we appreciate the update on that. That was some unforeseen things.
Thank y'all.
Very good, thank you.
Thanks, Lester.
Mr. Tate, anything more?
Yes, sir.
Very good. With that takes us to item 8, new business. Mr. Manager, is there any new business?
No, sir.
I have a question for the manager.
You have a question?
I do.
Go ahead.
Lance, you and I talked earlier, based on the sheriff's thing tonight, I know that come from forfeiture money, I think, but I believe that he had made a statement that a private group had paid for a trip, and I don't have any problem with that. But I was wondering, I noticed that from time to time when we see people donate money to the sheriff's department or to EMS or to some other group, that gets put in the budget. And I talked to you about that. Did we ever find out whether that needs to be included in the budget or not?
I'll look into that, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Very good.
That's
Thank
it,
you.
Mr. Chair.
That takes us to Commissioner comments. We'll start with Commissioner Barrow.
Thank you for everybody that came out tonight. I hope everyone had a great Easter weekend, had a chance to spend time with your family. I'd just like to send out a congratulations to Reidsville and Rockingham County native Breon Pass. He plays for the NC State Wolfpack, who recently have won the ACC championship and then have made it to the Final Four in the NCAA tournament, a couple of games away from possibly being national champions. So congratulations, Breon. We are pulling for you and hope that you guys do great next weekend. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Very good. Thank you. Commissioner Richardson.
Well, I would offer congratulations to both the men's and women's team from NCSU. It's nice to see some red and white in there. And I admit the prejudice for that team, but at least North Carolina is represented in the Final Four this year. I'd like to take a moment to recognize Ms. Pat Galloway. Pat served this county dutifully and well for the last few years and is coming up on retirement before long. And she's one of those public servants that you don't get to visit with a lot and don't see a lot unless she's here answering questions, like Mr. Tate brings up on occasion. But over the course of her stay, she saved the taxpayer quite a bit of money, particularly in refinancing our debt, which has allowed us to stay where we have been staying in regards to tax rate. So in essence, for the public, I want you to know and thank Pat Galloway for a superb job. And she does it with good humor, and she hires wonderful people to assist her. Just the epitome of a manager that takes good care of her, not only herself and her people, but the funds that belong to the public. She has saved us all a lot of tax money. So kudos to Pat Galloway. That's all I have to offer tonight, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Powell.
Tonight, the only elected representative I believe we had with us was Sheriff Sam Page. We heard from him. Thank him for coming. And Mr. Chairman, that's all I have.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner. And again, I thank all those who have tuned in. We've kind of had light attendance tonight, I think being Easter Monday. But so we appreciate those who did make it tonight. We appreciate you guys. And our next meeting will be Monday, April 15th, 6:30 here in the Governmental Center. With that, we will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, folks.